Good evening, everyone. This is LinkSeasonMaster, self-proclaimed crazy person and goofball extraordinaire. Alright, for tonight's vlog, I will be covering the film I saw in theaters a few hours ago, actually. James Bond, No Time to Die. Now, here's the thing. I've I know who James Bond is, and I know how his cultural reference is, but I don't have all that much experience with the series. I remember vaguely trying to read a book, because yes, he does. For those who don't know, he also has a book series. Tried reading one random book in this series. Didn't really get it at the time. But I still have it, and maybe I'll give it another shot. And I vaguely remember watching two of his older films, two James Bond older films in when I was in elementary school. I couldn't tell you which ones they were, who was playing them, who was playing the titular spy. I think one of them involved like a winner, like I think like some kind of chase in a snow thing or something. Like my memory is of that is very foggy at best. But when Spectre was in theaters a few years ago, I felt an urge to eventually go back and watch all his older films. Didn't get around to it, but especially after this last one, I really do think I need to get into that. Get on that. Going to try avoiding as many spoilers as I can for this film, but if a few come up, I apologize. But it does this. It's a good film, and I think the writing is actually really strong. But it's clear that a lot of these are characters are individuals returning from other other films in the franchise that I don't really know all that well. But this was clearly meant to be a sort of send off to Daniel Craig, the actor, the actor who's been playing James Bond for at least the last few films. And I could tell, like so all I'm gonna say is the ending didn't entirely surprise me, knowing what I've known since I heard on at midnight. I have no idea if anyone here even remembers that show, but it's one of my favorite live action shows. Sadly, it's not on air anymore, but it was some great humor, and the host was just plain likable. But he made mention that Daniel Craig expressed he was getting kind of tired and wanted to stop. So I am a little. The credits do say that the character James Bond will return, but I have no idea how they're going to do that in the future. Will it be a reboot? Will it be someone else? Will somebody else who's going to take up the role? Or are they going to pass? Or is it just going to be a 007 film with it being passed the torch to one of the newer characters in this film? I do not know. So yes, I would at least, if I'm going to recommend this movie, I would recommend at least seeing Spectre, because in a lot of ways this is actually a direct sequel. And it's a good one. And it plays with a few elements that I have no idea if any of the other properties have played with. Specifically, well, James Bond, considering the number of people he's romanced over the years, I'm surprised it hasn't led to a, like, I would not be surprised if there was a Damian Wayne situation. At least in some that has been explored in the past, but the idea was definitely explored here, and I think it was explored very well. And one thing I do also really like about this film and the last is that I've also heard all the jokes about. Well, I mean, I saw Austin Powers for the first time this summer, and I find Doctor Evil hilarious, but he's clearly, even I could tell he's supposed to be mocking a lot of the whole Bond villain doing some ridiculous things and not actually finishing the darn job. These last two films have made it clear that these guys are not idiots. They and in the last film, the main antagonist had a was justified in his, well, there was a justification for his sadistic treatment of Bond, in that they actually had a history. So, and he was not, like, he was being, like, he only took, the thing is, he didn't leave Bond unattended. He didn't do any of that. He was there. And in this case, the guy, the villain in this film, was in a lot of ways a tragic individual and a good foil for Bond. But he wasn't an idiot either. He had ambition, and and he made, like, he knew full well Bond's threat, but he knew also, due to a lot of their similarities, he knew what made him tick and knew how to try to get an advantage over him, and in a way that made sense and did not feel like stupid. But like, but that's something I've also found I kind of enjoy about Lupin, the most recent seasons of Lupin the Third, specifically Part 4 and 5. I'm not that familiar with 1, 2, or 3, but so I don't know if Zenigata is this much like that either in the original comics or in the older seasons, but one of the things I really liked about Part 4 and 5 is how they characterize, or just Zenigata and Lupin, and that it's not a case of, like, bumbling protagonist with an even more bumbling antagonist. No. Like, with Lupin, like, and Zenigata, like, it's clear, like, Zenigata, especially in these, he is no fool. And the reason that nobody, and he's genuinely seems to, in a lot of ways, come closer to catching Lupin than anybody else. In fact, at one point when he lost his memories and that he was an inspector and started using Lupin's own tricks against him, he almost won. And that's just it. Zenigata, the reason he's on the Lupin case is that he's one of the few people who even has a chance of catching him. He's actually really smart and really good. It's just that Lupin is just that much smarter. And I like that. I like it when it's neither the hero nor the villain or both being morons, and it's just one person just makes an seemingly uncharacteristic, or like they are there's all the people are, like, it's stated in the universe they're supposed to be smart and it's not demonstrated. No, these guys are being smart. It's just, so it really is a case of mind games and playing on people's weaknesses. And I find that pretty compelling, honestly. Like, I mean, yes, we know who we root for, and they're, in a case like this, they're going to get some kind of victory out of it, but I like to see them work for it. And I like to see that they don't, that they just manage to do that. Wasn't a moment of, like, really incompetence on the antagonist's part. It's just the protagonist was just that much more competent. That's what I like. Also, there's some scenes that did make me nervous. Like, I can say there's a few scenes where there's some. I get nervous for, there's certain children in the, like, there's some younger individuals in this film, and I get very nervous when I see them being threatened in a case like this. Which happens when you're dealing with some of these really bad people that Bond goes after. but I, but, and I saw it in IMAX, which I guess I don't do it at, even before the pandemic. I guess I didn't do it that often because I guess I either forgot or didn't realize just how loud the action scenes were going to be. But they were good. They were fun. So yeah. I feel like I would have appreciated, in the end, I feel like I would have appreciated this film more if I had actually knew more about Bond and his history. because clearly there's a lot of these characters who I feel like I'm kind of expected to know. Unfortunately, I didn't. Or at least I didn't know them as well as certain other things. I do, but if you don't mind that, a little bit of confusion in that regard, I still would recommend seeing at least Spectre before you see this, if you haven't already. Because as I said, it's a direct sequel. And it opens up with some things that will really confuse you if you haven't seen at least the ending of the previous one. But yeah, I'm glad I went. It's enjoyable. It was very enjoyable. I could see why it's getting so much praise, even if I probably didn't appreciate it as much as much longer time fans would have. But that just gives me all the more reason to take a look at some of the more classics and influential ones, especially GoldenEye, because I'm constantly hearing about how that one's video game adaptation was it revolutionized an entire genre. But anyway, thank you all for listening. So, goodbye. Until next time.